Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Welcome to My World. I am Dr. Kristen of the Good Doctors of Abbey Research. We exist at Abbey Research to educate around empathy and inclusivity and a whole lot of other really big words. But one of the best ways to do that is to have chats with people who are different than us and learn a little bit about what it's like in that person's life for a little bit, which is this series. We do it in a whole lot of other ways, but welcome to my world. I get to chat to fascinating people who are not me about pieces of their life that don't exist in mine. And today I have the privilege of being joined by the amazing Tricia Brouk. Tricia is an let me make that clear, internationally award-winning director. She founded the Big Talk Academy and was the executive producer of TEDx Lincoln Square. She curates the Speaker Salon in New York City, hosts the Big Talk, which is an award-winning podcast that I've had the privilege of being on and will be on again soon. And her book, The Influential Voice, Saying What You Mean for Lasting Legacy, was the #1 new release on Amazon. Beyond that, she puts up with me on a regular basis. So we are all grateful to Tricia for that. Tricia, we're so thrilled you're here. Thank you.
Kristen, I'm super excited to be here with you today. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be on your show.
It's an absolute joy. So besides the incredible accolades, I know that you are much more three-dimensional than your resume. So would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
I would love to. I grew up on a farm in Arnold, Missouri, where I learned how to shoot a gun, skin a squirrel, and have squirrel for dinner.
Love it.
And I also knew that was not the place I was going to stay. I did not want to grow up there. I knew that I was going to move to New York City and pursue a career in dance when I saw my sister dressed in a pink poodle costume on the dance recital stage. No interest in being a pink poodle or doing flat ball change, but that idea of being on a stage and what that meant overwhelmed me. And from that moment forward, I became obsessed with ballet. PBS was my go-to channel. Gelsey Kirkland, Baryshnikov, Nutcracker. It was what I woke up to do every single day. I would literally, Kristen, put the arches of my feet underneath door jambs so that it would make my feet point even more. I would walk on the tops of my feet with my toes curled under so that I could create more of an arch. I was really, really skinny, had massively huge feet, which was perfect for being a ballet dancer. And studied dance with my dance teacher, Sharon McGuire, and her mother, Lillian Denoyer. And what was so amazing about this, which I didn't know until much later, was that these two women became my mentors. They taught me about confidence. They taught me about discipline. They taught me about grace and grit and independence. And had I not studied with them in dance school, I would not be the woman I am today. And I'm so grateful to them. And actually, Sharon McGuire is mentioned in my book, The Influential Voice, and she and I are still very close. And I just sent her a copy. And she, of course, was very moved that I mentioned her in my book. Moved to New York City to pursue a career in dance, had the privilege and pleasure of dancing all around the world, all the opera houses in all the major cities, Paris, Vienna, Palermo, Portugal, and of course, New York City, where I have resided with my husband, Joe, and my two cats, Lola and Bella, for the last 30 years. When I moved on from dance, I decided that I wanted to have more of an impact and that my legacy, my impact was limited to the length of time on stage and the number of people in the theater. If I moved myself to the other side of the table, I could support more people in doing that. And that's what I began doing. And then all of a sudden, everything went into a completely different direction. Somebody asked me to direct them speaking, to direct their TED Talk. And I thought, that sounds super fun, just like a one-woman show. And that's how I approached it. Script analysis, choreography and blocking, intention, same thing I do with my actors. But what I didn't realize was working with a thought leader, working with someone who has something really important to say in order to change the world and make an impact on humanity was bigger than I thought imaginable.
Okay.
And all of a sudden I had all these incredible speakers and I could teach them the same thing I'm teaching my actors, which is how to share that message from a place of authenticity and truth. And everything changed. My impact, my legacy, it went far beyond being a dancer and far beyond being a producer and a director. And I still produce and direct. I have a lot of things happening, but being able to amplify and elevate voices is why I'm on this earth.
I love it.
Being able to teach people how to share their message and speak with dignity and respect and curiosity and excellence and love is why I get up every day. And it's why I have the privilege of working with someone like you, Kristen.
Thank you. It's fascinating. I've heard you tell this story a couple times in a couple different ways, but the thing that struck me this time the most is the connection of the work with your body throughout this, that like you had to understand and have a very specific relationship with your body early on as a dancer and had to maintain that. And I think most of us who are into performing arts have heard dancers talk about your feet and your bodies and your breath and your carriage and how intense you have to be around those things. But then to connect ideas and grounded ideas and communicating it with then how people move their bodies on stage. That's just a really fascinating, because I think especially for speakers and writers, because a lot of us are writers, we don't think about embodiment of how we communicate as intentionally as performers in character have to. But from what I know from you, like we have to think about it just as much.
Absolutely. And the more comfortable you are in your body, the more you're going to be able to deliver that impactful message. And nobody's going to see this because they're just being impacted by what you're saying.
Right.
And that's something that is really important. If the speaker is self-conscious about what they're doing on stage, whether it's not knowing when to move or feeling terribly, terribly, painfully uncomfortable by not moving, that's what we're watching. Instead of having that message being translated in a way that's making us think differently. And that the self-consciousness with the body, the self-consciousness with the movement, with the voice pattern, with how you're delivering it, it all comes together. And really the dancer part of me is the discipline. It's the determination. It's the drive. It is applying every plie I ever did in my entire life to the work I do now.
And so you meet somebody who you know has a great message, and their body is the barrier between it, and how they feel about their body and how they embody their body is the barrier. Where do you start in that work? Because they're not used to doing the plies. So like, what is the starting point?
I give them something else to do. I literally make them clean up the stage. And I'll put a bunch of stuff on stage, music stands, brooms, chairs, towels, just put as much stuff onto that stage as possible. Okay. And then I make them clean it. It's really hard to be self-conscious of your body when you're cleaning the house, when you're putting stuff away. And when they are out of their head and literally in their body, because to lift a stool means you have to use your body.
Yeah.
And to lift it appropriately means you can't affect how you're going to lift that stool, unless I'm telling you to lift it like a certain character.
Right.
And when I give actors, speakers something to do and they physicalize truth, they ground.
Yeah, because so much of our self-consciousness is just our perception of what other people think of us. So if we distract ourselves into just using it like the tool it is, it's in some ways like, I mean, we make far too much of our bodies and not enough of our bodies. Like we have to find the balance in doing that. That's doing other things. How has that changed for you in coaching entirely over Zoom?
Great question. I can pick up on somebody's affectation even on Zoom.
Okay.
Whether they are like uncomfortable and leaning to the side, or they can't sit still and the camera's zooming in and out because it's on autofocus. And it really is about teaching for Zoom and for camera. It's about teaching the actor or the speaker to look directly into the lens, to monitor the frame, and to be comfortable with stillness. Too much hand moving, too much swaying side to side, we start to get seasick as an audience because this tiny little frame is what we've been looking at for so long. It's really important to train the speakers to be super calm in this tiny little frame and to know what it is that we're looking at. And this is what's very interesting too. When I talk about theater versus my filmmaking in the theater, I can't really force you where to look. And I can sort of try with lighting. If I light this area, that's where you're most likely going to look. But when I'm in the theater, I'm looking at everything.
Yeah, same.
When it comes to film, I can force the audience member where to look based on my shot. So if you are talking, speaking across the room from a Zoom camera, you better be really sure what it is you want your audience to see and to look at. And if I want the audience to have some sort of connection to me, that's even more important, that I'm going to lean into the camera. If I want them to feel like I don't care, I lean back. All of that choreography and that consciousness around your body is super important. And I'll share something with you, Kristen. During the pandemic, I gave myself the challenge of doing 80 YouTube videos. That was literally dropping a new video 5 days a week for 4 months. And it was one of the hardest challenges I've ever done, because who has that many outfits?
Yeah. That's a lot. Okay.
Second of all, how can I be grounded in my body for 80 videos without being like agitated or annoyed or like exhausted? And that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Talk about being a dancer, talk about that discipline and really coming into the camera as if this is the first video I've done. And no, this is the 75th video I've done. And my voice is tired and I've got a new scarf on. And that's about the discipline, and that's about the plies. When speakers come to me and they think, I'm going to do a talk, it's going to be so fun. Yes, it's absolutely fun. And you are an athlete, period.
I have 17 questions. Let me pick the first one. So what is the balance then between, because it's still a performance, and Dr. Aaron and I have talked on this channel a lot about the Zoom fatigue, and how one of those things is that people are not used to staring at themselves and being aware of themselves, and that's an exhausting thing. But also that in the era of Zoom, we have lost a little bit of that really clear edge between boundaries in terms of how we communicate professionally and how we kind of do that. So you show up for 80 straight days and 80 different scarves. And a lot of how you show up in the world is as a professional person. And yet I know you show up the same wherever you are. So like, that's kind of authentically you, but that's still authentically your professional self. So how difficult was it in that disciplined time as you're doing your plies to maintain that boundary and not just be like, you know what, I'm just going to be totally Tricia today. And like, yet you are totally Tricia as you are right now, but there's still those differences.
It's the difference between being on stage and off stage.
And do you consider YouTube to be on stage?
I absolutely do. Yes.
Okay.
When I am delivering content, whether it's YouTube, speaking, my community, I am on stage.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that I have a separation or a veil at all, but it means that I have to step into the role of effective communicator, because it's my responsibility to deliver the information in a way that's going to serve my community. And that is why it's absolutely on stage.
Okay. And do you have to do, I mean, performers sometimes talk about like rituals to get on stage and things like that. Are there things you have to do? Is there, I mean, a chair you have to sit in, a drink you have to have, something that helps you maintain that on stageness?
When I was dancing, my rituals were very serious, and I ended my dance career very intentionally, like the Zen sand sculptures, where the Buddhist monks, they create these gorgeous mandalas with sand, and it takes months. And then when they're finished, they wipe it away. That was exactly how I created my final solo dance concert, which was called Dining Alone. And what I did was set up the process for 9 months. I hired a dancer to be my understudy so I could see her doing the dances. Ooh. And give myself notes on the choreography while I was watching someone else do it. I hired a director who was at the time Joe Ricci, who is now my husband. We did not date during that time, but I did have a director who was an outside eye. Mm-hmm. And I also knew what my body was going to do if I had protein before rehearsal, if I had carbs before rehearsal. Okay. I knew that in between each dance, because this was an hour-long solo show, yikes, I needed to Say that again.
I said, yikes a go-go, an hour-long dancing solo show. Well, you
Yes.
don't do anything halfway, so this should not surprise me.
I just have to say yikes a go-go. That was amazing. I needed to know at what point my quadriceps would build up lactic acid so that during the costume change, I would have to sit. I needed to understand at what point I needed to be standing and stretching my calves and my Achilles because I was about to go do a dance that had a lot of jumping. I literally used those 9 months to determine what I needed, how much water, what I was going to eat. And that is how specific I got. Now that I don't need to warm up, I definitely set an intention. I come prepared. I understand who I'm talking to. I understand who the audience is. And that's the virtual way. If I'm performing on stage, I will do absolutely twice as long meditations. I will ask for a rehearsal ahead of time. Nobody knows they can do this. Speakers book gigs and they just think they have to show up and speak. Ask for a tech rehearsal. Most of the time, they'll give you the space during lunch. And guess what? You have an entire hour to be on that stage by yourself, walking the space, visualizing what tomorrow is going to look like so that you are setting yourself up for success. And as a performer, I am constantly preparing for what can go wrong so that when it does, I know what to do. If you don't prepare for what can go wrong, which is bring an extra clicker, make sure your shoes are right, understand that if you're wearing pants that are corduroy, it's going to make noise when you walk. Get really clear on working all those details out ahead of time. If you have a sandwich right before you go on and your stomach starts digesting the food and making those strange noises, you're going to feel awkward. So know that. Give yourself every possible scenario ahead of time so that when you're on stage, all you have to worry about is delivering that content and serving that audience.
Yeah, it's funny you say about the tech rehearsal because so much of academic speaking is conferences where you have no idea what's going on. Also, like no one will be in the audience. There's like 3 people. And the point of it is to put it on your resume. The point is not the performance. The point is it's great if you can share the information, but you almost don't expect to. So there's so many times that I have walked into things completely cold and the tech didn't work and like all that other stuff. And transitioning out of academic speaking and into other stuff, I realize now that I could have so many times gone back and been like, right, but I'm going to need that room a half an hour ahead of time. And that's seen in that world as high maintenance and uppity and like a whole lot of other things. But what it really is just saying, I'm going to professionally show up. And that's not how it was given to me so often. But yeah, like I've spoken in hotel ballrooms where like the stairs up to the stage never showed up. So you have to figure out how to get on the stage using like chairs. And if I hadn't been there half an hour ahead of time, I would have been screwed because my brain would have been.
And when you rise to that level as a performer and you make everyone else rise with you, they're excited because there is a crew there. There is a crew, a tech crew, a sound and audio and visual crew there. And when you say, hey, I want to hear that music a little louder, can you make sure that those slides advance when I'm saying this and this? They get to do their job.
Oh, that's such a great reframing. Okay, I would love to switch topics really briefly here now to a topic that we haven't covered, but I love to talk to you about, which is that part of your intention is to have a very, very clear set of boundaries around your daily schedule, which is something that I don't think, especially as women and as professional women, we talk about enough. So could you share with my audience the times of days you no longer answer your phone?
Absolutely. I shut off at 5 p.m. Eastern. And the reason that I do that is because I go to bed at between 7 and 7:30 every single night. And I wake up at 4 a.m. because my work is so meaningful to me and I want to show up as fully as I can every single day. And mornings are very, very important to me. Giving myself the morning to have self-care, meditate, work out, prepare for my clients enables me to serve at the highest possible level. I am a high performer and I have a lot to do. I'm extremely productive, and that is how I do that. If I were to blur those lines and allow clients to ask for time for meetings, to take meetings, to go to networking events after 5 o'clock, I would be going to bed later and I would be waking up not my best. And that's not how I show up for my clients, for my community, for my family. And that's why it's really important. And something that I've put into place, which has served me really well, and I'm going to give you this language so that you can use it, is it is my policy to not go out past 5 o'clock during the week. So nobody's feelings get hurt. You don't sound like you're really stringent in how you live your life. It's simply my policy is I don't go out past 5 o'clock during the week. And anyone who knows me, I have no notifications on. So you can email me, you can Voxer me. I'm not going to get any of it because I don't have notifications on. So when people, clients, friends, email or Vox, they say, I know you're in bed, but I just wanted you to wake up to this note in the morning. And it makes me so happy because they're giving themselves permission to accept who I am. And I'm hoping that it will potentially rub off on them.
Yeah. And I mean, we've known each other for a short time comparatively. And already I have gotten stronger with my friends of saying, I no longer check this app after 9:30. And feeling less guilty about falling asleep in the middle of conversations sometimes, because I have friends all over the world in various time zones. So I used to like, oh, well, this person's in Poland and they're awake. And so I have to like no, I can just be like, hey, deuces, I'm exhausted. And like, we always hold ourselves to higher standards than we hold to other people in terms of relationships very frequently. So I give grace totally to everybody who would say that, and yet I won't give it to myself. So it is also, I think that policy language for our viewers is very important to it is also tell that to yourself. It is our policy that our body needs this much. It is our thing. And that can be really, it's still a discipline though. How long did it take you to like be able to not ever doubt yourself in that process? Like, was it a couple months or a couple weeks before you're like, nope, I can do this all the time now?
I have friends who I danced with 25 years ago who are now living in Miami. They have a family, they're doing real estate, they're no longer dancers either. And they will, to this day, make fun of how strict I was with my time and my schedule.
So just how you've always been, which is helpful. Yeah.
And that's the dancer thing. I don't feel good at a ballet class at 10 a.m. if I don't get a good night's sleep.
That's fair.
And that just wasn't something I was willing to accept and willing to live through. Another piece of language that I want to share with your audience is we've all been on calls now with Zoom where people think they can just go over because it's Zoom, right? And that's something that I find very interesting. And I've had clients who will start a new line item at 10:59 when our call ends at 11. And I see them sneaking and trying to, and sometimes it's unintentional. And the language that I use around that is, I want to be mindful of time. We have a minute left. And then it's not like I'm not going to give you extra time or I can't keep talking to you. It's literally, I want to be mindful of our time. We have a minute left. You can do whatever you want with these last 60 seconds.
Yeah. And the firmness that comes with that is still a grace. Like, be mindful of time, full stop. We're all terrible at minding time. And that's been a joke throughout the pandemic. But I think even before the pandemic, we were not skilled at minding our time. And I also, back to bodies, just thought about so much of my life, my profession has not been attached to my body. My profession has been entirely attached to my brain. And so I can show up tired and exhausted because I created, instead of fixing my body and getting more sleep, I just created patterns in which I could make my brain still perform at its highest level, even functioning on small sleep. So I have all these cheats and a completely unhealthy relationship with coffee and all of those things because I didn't ground my body in my discipline early enough in my life. And that is something that I'm doing now with many more fits and starts than I do with the productivity around my brain, because that I'm used to doing. That muscle I work out all the time. But the rest of my body, I don't have as strong a relationship with.
And it's not about perfection. It's about consistency. That's really important here. It's about showing up as fully as you can, as often as you can, and giving yourself grace and forgiving yourself when things aren't what you had desired. And sometimes I don't sleep very well in the night. I'm still going to get up at 4. I might feel tired and I might say, my Oura ring is telling me that I didn't get enough sleep last night. Perhaps I should go a little easier on the Peloton. And it's really being in that ebb and flow about what your body needs. And I'm really glad you're bringing this up, Kristen, because I think so many people rely on their brains and rely on this is how I can show up. Check in, because the more integrated your intellect is with your body, the more it's going to serve each other. And they work in congruence, and it's really important to check in with your body.
Oh, absolutely. Especially as we are seeing, Tricia and I are speaking in March of 2021, whenever you are watching this, but we're already seeing marked increases throughout the world in anxiety disorders and sleeplessness and things that are very, very emotionally caused physical reactions. There's also mental health, et cetera, et cetera. But in this particular case, we're seeing it directly from the pandemic and the global anxiety. And so I hope you can really hear what Tricia's been saying over the last couple minutes about the importance of understanding your physicality beyond like just what you weigh or what size clothes you're wearing, but actually understanding what your body is doing. And this channel talks a lot about body culture and diet culture, and we will still continue to, but I just wanted to point out that little difference. So,
and I'd love to piggyback on that really quickly, Kristen, because I want to highlight this. I am a former dancer. And there is a stereotype that goes with dancers that you have to be skinny and that you have to look a certain way. And that is something that I early on refused, would not accept. I was not going to not get jobs because I had to be so skinny. I was not going to not hire dancers because they didn't look like everybody thinks a dancer should look. And we can go down that road. But what I'm trying to get at is physicality is how you embody who you are within your physical being. And there's many ways to decide what that looks like.
yeah, I do want to go down that road really briefly because when you had the power and the control to make those decisions, like that's beautiful. But obviously there's so many people in your industry that don't have that level of the ability to kind of dictate that. So as you, as somebody not shaped like a dancer, thank you for doing that. I know the first time I remember I saw somebody in a full costume, like that wasn't a separate fat person costume, but a completely normal costume that was shaped like me, in line with everybody else, was in the current production of Moulin Rouge that's happening at the Al Hirschfeld. And I've been going to the theater for 30 years. And that's the first time I remember seeing that. And so that's still a thing. So at least from the outside, I feel like the attitude that you bring, which is the healthy attitude of my body is my body and it is not pervasive within entertainment. Do you think it's getting better? And am I wrong? Like, help me with that.
I don't think you're wrong. I think it's there's more conscious body types than we can see.
Yeah.
Because, for example, Bill T. Jones' company, he has all kinds of body types, and he always had all kinds of body types. And that, I'm from the modern dance world, so I was more conscious of that.
Okay.
It's really specific to ballet companies, Broadway shows, and it requires these conversations. If we start having these conversations and those people who are casting shows, the directors, the producers, start to become conscious that a dancer is a dancer. A dancer is not defined by the numbers on a scale. A dancer is a dancer. A performer is a performer. And when we start to revisit those conversations and get really clear on what that is, then having these conversations potentially can affect the producers and the directors and the people who are choosing the cast. And it's really just constant, conscious conversation.
And a lot of people in your position and in others doing a lot of labor around that. So that's, like there's lots of conversations happening on Instagram right now about diversification in theater, full stop, body type, racial, sexuality, ethnic, everything. And I wonder, as this year off starts to taper out and we start to see live productions again in New York, what the changes will look like.
Can't wait. I'm hopeful, Kristen.
I know Erin and I will be in the front row of any show that has people that look like us on the stage, and we're not alone. So my final question, because I will also could also talk about bodies for the rest of forever, is if somebody is watching this right now and would love to be a speaker or would love to kind of get into it, and their immediate thought when they think that is, I have nothing to say, what would you say to them?
I would say that there are 7.8 billion people on this planet, and there's one person who needs to hear what only you have to say. And your voice matters. And when you share that powerful story, you can change and even save a life.
And she's not joking. So Tricia, thank you so much for being with us. Everybody in the show notes is going to be all the ways to get a hold of her. I can absolutely endorse the Academy and working with Tricia. And I know that there's a lot of my fellow members of graduates of the Big Talk Academy that would say the same thing. And please consider that as you are thinking about that story you have to tell. And it's not just one, it's usually a lot. And we need you active in the narrative of humanity, and we need to know your perspective. So please consider gracing us with it. And as you listen to this, her book on Amazon is available. So make sure to follow that link and purchase it. And other places too, I'm sure. I just always buy on Amazon. I can't lie. Sorry. Because I read on Kindle, and that's a thing. So again, Tricia, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Kristen.
And friends, we will see you on the next episode of Welcome to My World. Bye.